In the heart of a war-torn Neo-Tokyo, the air crackled with tension as Captain Icarus Voss surveyed the chaotic battlefield. Buildings, once proud symbols of human achievement, now stood as crumbling ruins, remnants of a civilization under siege. Dark clouds loomed overhead, mirroring the despair that permeated the city. The relentless whir of Zynthorian drones filled the air, their metallic forms cutting through the haze like phantoms of destruction. With a steely gaze, Icarus clenched his fists around the handles of his weapons, ready to lead his elite team into the fray. "Move out!" he barked, his voice a commanding presence amid the chaos. His team, battle-hardened soldiers who looked up to him with unwavering trust, sprang into action. They dashed through the debris, dodging laser fire as they advanced toward their mechanical foes. Icarus's heart raced, adrenaline surging through his veins as he activated his combat suit, the technology enhancing his strength and agility. "Cover me!" he shouted, leaping over a shattered concrete barrier. The ground shook beneath their feet as explosions erupted in the distance, the sound echoing like thunder. His soldiers responded with precision, laying down suppressive fire that illuminated the twilight with bursts of energy. Icarus charged forward, ducking and rolling beneath a barrage of enemy fire, his focus sharp as he engaged a drone that hovered menacingly above. With a swift movement, he unsheathed his plasma blade, its blue glow a stark contrast to the darkness surrounding him. The drone whirred, attempting to evade him, but Icarus was faster. He lunged, slicing through the drone's exterior, sending sparks flying in all directions. As the machine fell to the ground with a metallic clatter, he felt a surge of satisfaction. But there was no time for celebration. The battle raged on. "Captain, 3 more incoming at 12 o'clock, one of his soldiers yelled, urgency lacing his voice. Icarus pivoted, assessing the situation. The Zynthorian drones were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. "We need to regroup," he shouted, signaling for his team to fall back momentarily. They took refuge behind the remains of a skyscraper, panting heavily, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. "Sir, what's our next move?" his second-in-command, Lieutenant May, asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Icarus took a deep breath, formulating a plan in the chaos of his mind. "We need to draw them in. If we can create a distraction, we can flank them from the side." "Understood," May replied, determination shining in her eyes. With a nod, they split up, Icarus leading one group while May led another. The next few minutes blurred into a whirlwind of action. Explosions, shouts, and the crackle of energy weapons filled the air as they executed their plan with precision. As the last of the drones fell, silence enveloped the battlefield, broken only by the distant sirens of emergency services. Icarus's heart still raced, the adrenaline slowly ebbing away. He surveyed the destruction around him, the weight of their victory settling uneasily in his chest. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Later that day, in the dimly lit command center, Icarus sat across from General Hanzo, the tension palpable. The walls were adorned with screens displaying reports of the ongoing conflict. "We've received intel about a new Zynthorian envoy," Hanzo began, his expression grave. "Her name is Lyra, and she claims to want peace. But I don't trust them, Icarus. Not after everything they've done." Icarus nodded, his mind racing. "What's the plan for the negotiations?" he asked, trying to mask the unease creeping into his thoughts. "Stay vigilant," Hanzo warned, his eyes narrowing. "We cannot let our guard down. If they're planning a trap, we need to be prepared." As the general spoke, Icarus felt an unexpected flutter of curiosity mixed with apprehension. The name Lyra echoed in his mind, a haunting melody that stirred something deep within him. He had fought fiercely against the Zynthorians, viewing them as his enemies at every turn. Yet, a small part of him wondered, could there be more to this war than he had been led to believe? Later, as night fell over Neo-Tokyo, Icarus found himself unable to shake the thought of the anticipated meeting with Lyra. What would she be like? Would she embody the malice he associated with her people, or would she represent a different possibility? Clenching his fists, he steeled himself for what lay ahead, knowing that his duty to humanity would be tested in ways he could not yet comprehend. In the shadows of the command center, he glanced at the flickering screens, their light casting an otherworldly glow on his face. The night was thick with uncertainty, and as he prepared for the inevitable encounter with the Zynthorian diplomat, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the world pressing down on him. Would he find an enemy or a kindred spirit in Lyra? In that moment, the battle for Earth felt as much about the heart as it was about survival. Captain Icarus Voss sat on the edge of his bunk in the dimly lit barracks, the weight of the universe pressing heavily on his shoulders. His thoughts spiraled around his recent encounter with Lyra, the Zynthorian diplomat, and the undeniable connection that had formed between them. It was a distraction he couldn't afford, especially with the stakes so high. The flickering overhead light cast shadows across the room, mirroring the conflict brewing within him. "Hey, Icarus," a familiar voice broke through his reverie. Marcus, his best friend and trusted confidant, leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Icarus sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's nothing, Marcus. Just trying to figure out the next move in this mess with the Zynthorians." "Nothing? You're a terrible liar." Marcus stepped inside, his brow furrowed in concern. "I know you. What's really going on?" "I met Lyra," Icarus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I can't shake this feeling, this connection. But I'm supposed to be focused on the mission, not whatever this is." Marcus raised an eyebrow, leaning in closer. "You're falling for an alien diplomat? You realize that could jeopardize everything we're fighting for, right? You're the captain, Icarus. Your loyalty is to humanity first." "I know that." Icarus snapped, the frustration boiling over. "But she's not like the others, Marcus. She's passionate about peace, about finding a way for our worlds to coexist. I can't ignore what I feel just because it's complicated." "Complicated doesn't even begin to cover it," Marcus replied, his tone more serious. "You need to keep your head in the game. We're on the brink of war, and if the Zynthorians are planning something, I can't just dismiss her." Icarus interrupted, the intensity of his emotions flaring. "She confided in me. There are factions within her people that want to sabotage the peace talks. We have to be careful." "Then you need to distance yourself from her," Marcus urged, shaking his head. "Emotions cloud judgment. You can't let your heart lead you into a trap." Icarus stood abruptly, frustration boiling within him. "Do you think I want this? Do you think I want to be torn between my duty and what my heart is telling me? It's not that easy." Marcus took a step back, his expression softening. "I get it, I do. But you're a warrior, Icarus. You have to think strategically. If there's a chance she could betray us, you need to be prepared for that." As the weight of his friend's words settled in, Icarus felt a pang of guilt. He knew Marcus was right. He had a responsibility to protect Earth and its people, yet the allure of Lyra's words and the spark in her eyes haunted him. He needed to find a balance, to understand the truth of her intentions. Later that evening, as negotiations between the two factions progressed, Icarus found himself alongside Lyra in a dimly lit conference room, tension thick in the air. He watched her as she spoke passionately to the assembled delegates, her Zynthorian features illuminated by the soft glow of holographic projections. There was a fire within her that he admired, but it also filled him with trepidation. After the meeting, he approached her, heart racing. "Lyra, can we talk?" "Of course, Captain," she replied, her expression brightening as she sensed his urgency. "What's on your mind?" "I've heard rumors about factions within your ranks that might disrupt these talks. I need to know if there's any truth to it," Icarus said, his voice low and serious. Lyra's face fell, concern etched in her features. "I fear you may be right. There are those among us who believe that peace is a sign of weakness. They wish to escalate tensions, not resolve them. Then we need to work together," Icarus urged, his resolve strengthening. "We can't let them sabotage what we've started here." "I agree," she said, her eyes searching his. "But it's dangerous. If they find out I'm collaborating with you, we'll find a way," he reassured her. "For the sake of both our worlds." As the stars began to twinkle outside the conference room's large windows, Icarus felt a sense of hope wash over him. Maybe, just maybe, They could forge a path to peace together. But as they stood close, the tension between them palpable, he couldn't help but feel the weight of their respective responsibilities looming over them. Lyra, he began, but before he could finish, the ground shook violently, an explosion rattling the building around them. The sound was deafening, and chaos erupted as alarms blared. "We need to get out of here," Icarus shouted, grabbing her hand as they rushed towards the exit, their budding connection overshadowed by the urgent need for survival. Amidst the chaos that erupted in the Grand Hall, Captain Icarus Voss and Lyra moved as one, their instincts honed by battle. The air crackled with tension, shouts of panic mingling with the sharp sounds of gunfire. Icarus, his heart racing, caught a glimpse of the Zynthorian diplomat beside him. Her azure skin glimmered under the harsh lights, and her eyes, wide with determination, mirrored his own resolve. "Stay close to me," he shouted over the cacophony, gripping his weapon tightly. Lyra nodded, her expression fierce as she adjusted her stance. They were a striking pair, one human, one Zynthorian, unified by purpose, yet divided by their origins. A group of rogue human soldiers burst through the doors, their faces twisted with rage and fear. "They're trying to deceive us," one of them yelled, raising his weapon. "We can't let them take our home." Icarus recognized the voice. It belonged to Darius, a former comrade, now blinded by a misguided sense of duty. "Darius!" Icarus called out. "Try to reach him. This is not the way. We can find another solution." But Darius was beyond reason. He aimed his weapon at Lyra, and in that split second, Icarus acted. He lunged forward, tackling Darius to the ground just as the gunfire erupted. The two men grappled fiercely, the sound of their struggle drowned out by the chaos surrounding them. "Get away from her!" Icarus growled, his voice low and fierce. He managed to wrest the weapon from Darius's grip, tossing it aside. "You're making a mistake." In the corner of his eye, Icarus saw Lyra engaging with another soldier, her movements fluid and precise. She darted between the attackers, striking with a combination of grace and ferocity that took Icarus's breath away. Her presence strengthened him, igniting a fire within him that he didn't know he possessed. "Watch your back," she shouted, dodging a blow from another rogue soldier. Icarus turned just in time to intercept the attacker, delivering a swift kick that sent the soldier sprawling. They were a well-oiled machine, their movements synchronized as they fought side by side, each protecting the other. As the dust began to settle and the last of the rogue soldiers fled, Icarus and Lyra stood amidst the remnants of the battle, breaths heavy, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Icarus looked at Lyra, who was brushing the dirt from her clothes. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etched across his face. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "But we need to figure out who sent them. This was a coordinated attack, and it's more than just rogue soldiers." Icarus nodded, the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. "We can't let this sabotage our efforts. We need to confront General Hanzo. He must know about this." As they made their way out of the hall, Icarus felt a sense of urgency mixed with dread. The attack had rattled him, but it was the look in Lyra's eyes that haunted him most, a mix of fear and determination that mirrored his own. They exited into the cold night, where the stars twinkled above them, oblivious to the turmoil below. "Icarus," Lyra began, her voice softer now, "if the humans are willing to go this far, what does that mean for our people? For us?" Her gaze pierced through the darkness, searching for answers that seemed elusive. "I don't know," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck in frustration. "But we can't let them dictate our futures. We need to stand together." As they walked towards the command center, Icarus felt the weight of his dual existence. He was a warrior, sworn to protect humanity, yet his heart was undeniably intertwined with Lyra's. The line between duty and desire blurred with every passing moment, and he knew that he was standing at a precipice. "Icarus," Lyra said, halting his stride, "if we're going to do this, if we're going to fight for peace, we have to trust each other completely." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "I do trust you, Lyra. More than anything." The sincerity in his voice resonated with both of them, a promise made amidst uncertainty. As they approached the command center, the reality of their situation weighed heavily on Icarus. He was a soldier caught between two worlds, and the choices he would have to make could either save or doom them all. As Icarus Voss stood before General Hanzo in the cold, stark command room of the Neo-Tokyo base, tension crackled like static in the air. The general, with arms crossed and brow furrowed, dismissed Icarus's concerns with a wave of his hand. "You're being naive, Icarus. The Zynthorians are not to be trusted. Their history is filled with treachery. We cannot afford to lower our guard now," he barked, his voice echoing off the metallic walls. Icarus clenched his fists, feeling the weight of isolation press down on him. "But General Lyra, she's different. She genuinely wants peace. We can't let our prejudices cloud our judgment. There are factions on both sides that want to escalate this conflict, but we have a chance to change that." Hanzo's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening. "Your emotions are clouding your judgment, Captain. Remember who you are. You are a soldier first. This is not about feelings, it's about duty." With those words, Icarus felt a rift forming within him, a chasm between his loyalty to humanity and his burgeoning love for Lyra. He turned away from the general, the weight of his heart heavy in his chest. In that moment, he felt more alone than ever, caught between the worlds he had fought to protect and the one he was drawn to. Meanwhile, Lyra stood in her own chamber, pacing as she prepared for her next meeting with the Zynthorian Council. Her heart raced, not just from the urgency of the peace negotiations, but from the conflict that brewed within her people. She knew that not everyone shared her vision for peace. "I can't believe the Council would even consider escalating the war," she murmured to herself, frustration boiling over. "We have a chance to end this, and they want to throw it away." As she looked out at the sprawling city, a sense of determination washed over her. She remembered Icarus's words, his conviction, and how they had bonded over their shared desire for peace. They had to unite their people, to show them that cooperation was the only path forward. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the meeting ahead. "I need to speak to Icarus," she decided, her heart quickening at the thought of him. Later that evening, Icarus arrived at the designated meeting point, a secluded garden adorned with bioluminescent plants that thrived under the artificial light. The vibrant colors mirrored the tumult of emotions within him. As he approached, he spotted Lyra, her ethereal presence calming yet electrifying. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting both concern and hope. "Icarus," she began, her voice soft yet firm, "I've been thinking a lot about our situation. There are factions in the Council that are dead set against peace. They believe we should retaliate, to show strength rather than seek understanding." He stepped closer, drawn to her as if by an invisible force. "I know. General Hanzo is convinced the Zynthorians are plotting against us. He hasn't seen the good in you, or the sincerity of your intentions." Lyra sighed, frustration evident in her demeanor. "We need to find a way to unite our people, to show them that peace is possible. If we don't act soon, the war will consume us both." Icarus nodded, his resolve hardening. "We can gather evidence against the rogue factions on both sides. If we expose their plans, we can sway the undecided and bring our leaders together." A flicker of hope ignited in Lyra's eyes. "Yes, that's it. If we can just reach out to the moderates in both our groups, we might stand a chance." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "But we need to be careful. If either side learns of our plan too soon." "I know," Icarus interrupted, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on him. "We'll have to keep this between us for now. Our lives and the lives of countless others depend on it." As they discussed their strategy, the air thick with unspoken feelings, Icarus felt a surge of affection for Lyra. He reached out, brushing a stray hair behind her ear, his heart racing at the intimacy of the gesture. "We'll make this work, Lyra. Together." Just as their eyes locked, a sudden crackle of static interrupted the moment. A distress call blared through Icarus's communicator, shattering the fragile peace they had built. "Captain Voss, we're under attack," the voice of one of his team members shouted, panic evident. "I have to go," he said, the urgency of duty pulling him away from Lyra's side. "Stay here. I'll be back as soon as I can." The look in her eyes told him she understood the weight of his choice, but he could see the worry clouding her expression. "I'll be waiting," she replied, a mixture of fear and determination in her voice. As Icarus rushed away, adrenaline coursing through his veins, he couldn't shake the feeling of tension that had sprung up between them. The mission ahead loomed ominously, and he knew that every decision he made would not only affect the lives of his comrades, but also the fragile bond he had formed with Lyra. The path they had chosen was fraught with danger, and the stakes were higher than ever. Icarus Voss sprinted through the debris-littered streets of Neo-Tokyo, his heart pounding with adrenaline. The sounds of gunfire and the shouts of his team echoed in his ears as he approached the ambush site. The rogue soldiers, led by his former comrade Darius, were merciless, their fervor fueled by a twisted sense of loyalty to humanity. Icarus had always been able to count on Darius, but now, faced with the betrayal of a friend, he felt a hollow ache in his chest. As he rounded the corner, Icarus spotted his team, pinned down and outnumbered. Without hesitation, he charged into the fray, his combat instincts kicking in. "Cover me!" he shouted, firing his plasma rifle at the nearest rogue soldier. The blast struck true, and the soldier crumpled to the ground. Icarus moved swiftly, aware that every second counted, but in the back of his mind, he could not shake the image of Darius's face. Once a friend, now a foe. "Captain, to your left," a voice cried out. Icarus turned just in time to dodge a hail of bullets, returning fire with precision. His team rallied behind him, and together they pushed forward, reclaiming ground inch by inch. The chaos stirred a primal rage within him, and Icarus found himself in a rhythm, a dance of life and death. Then he saw Darius, standing tall amidst the chaos, a cruel smile etched across his face. "Icarus, look at you, playing the hero," Darius shouted, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think your loyalty to those aliens will save you? They will betray you just like they betrayed us." Icarus felt a wave of anger wash over him. "You're wrong, Darius. This isn't about aliens or humans anymore. It's about peace." He charged forward, adrenaline fueling his every movement. The clash between them was fierce, two warriors entwined in a battle that felt personal. "You've always been weak, Icarus. Too soft-hearted for this world," Darius taunted, dodging a strike and countering with a punch that knocked Icarus back. Pain flared in his ribs, but he pushed through, rising to his feet. "You don't understand the bigger picture," Darius continued, his eyes wild. "The Zynthorians will destroy us all. In your quest for vengeance, you've lost sight of what's truly at stake." Icarus countered, launching himself at Darius again. Their bodies collided in a flurry of punches and kicks, each strike resonating with years of camaraderie turned sour. The fight was more than physical. It was a clash of ideals, of loyalty, and of love for their planet. Finally, with a surge of determination, Icarus gained the upper hand, pinning Darius to the ground. "It doesn't have to end like this," he panted, his voice strained. "We can find a way to work together. We can save our people." Darius's expression shifted from anger to something resembling despair. "You're a fool, Icarus. You'll see. You'll all see." With a sudden twist, Darius broke free, but not before Icarus delivered one last blow that sent him sprawling. As the dust settled, Icarus turned to his team, who were catching their breath, battered but alive. "We have to regroup and strategize. This isn't just about us anymore. The rogue faction has allied with Zynthorian extremists. We need to act fast before it escalates." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air as Icarus felt the gravity of the situation settle upon him. The fight was far from over, and he knew he had to return to Lyra with this grim revelation. She had been a beacon of hope amidst the chaos, and he needed her insight now more than ever. When he returned to the makeshift command center, the familiar sight of Lyra filled him with both warmth and apprehension. He needed her strength, but the burden he carried felt insurmountable. "Lyra," he began, his voice steady but laced with urgency, "we have a serious problem. The rogue soldiers have allied with extremists from your side. The peace we've fought for is at risk." Lyra's eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing her features. Then we have to act quickly. There's a way we can expose them and unite our factions. She stepped closer, determination radiating from her, and for a moment, Icarus forgot the chaos surrounding them. But as they shared that charged moment, he hesitated. Lyra, if we go down this path, our relationship could be seen as a betrayal by both sides. I can't let our feelings jeopardize everything we've worked for. She reached for his hand, her touch igniting a warmth that contrasted with his worries. Icarus, we cannot let fear dictate our actions. Together, we can show our people that love is stronger than hatred. Icarus searched her eyes, the weight of their reality pressing down, but her conviction sparked something within him. In that moment, he understood that their love, rather than being a liability, could be the very bridge to peace they desperately needed. As the peace talks resumed in the fortified chambers of Neo-Tokyo's Central Command, the atmosphere was thick with tension and hope. Icarus Voss stood at the edge of the conference table, his eyes scanning the faces of the delegates from both Earth and the Zynthorian delegation. Among them was Lyra, her ethereal presence, captivating yet imposing. Today was pivotal, not just for the fate of their people, but for the fragile bond they had forged amidst the chaos of war. Before we proceed, Lyra began, her voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of urgency. There is something I must disclose. The delegates shifted in their seats, and Icarus felt a ripple of anxiety coursing through him. He could sense that whatever she was about to reveal would change everything. I am not merely a diplomat, she continued, her striking violet eyes locking onto Icarus's. I am a member of the Zynthorian royal family. My mission here is to find a way to unify our people under a banner of peace. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. Icarus's heart raced as he absorbed the implications. This revelation not only put her in grave danger, but also elevated the stakes of their precarious alliance. Lyra, this is monumental, Icarus said, his voice a mix of admiration and concern. Do you realize what this means? If your identity is discovered. I know, she interrupted softly, her gaze unwavering. But I believe in this cause. I believe in us. Her words ignited a fire within him, but he couldn't shake the fear that loomed over them. Just as the discussions began to regain momentum, chaos erupted. A sudden blast echoed through the chamber, causing the walls to shake and debris to rain down. Icarus instinctively moved closer to Lyra, shielding her with his body as shouts of alarm filled the air. Stay close, he commanded, his instincts as a warrior kicking in. With the delegates in disarray, Icarus spotted a group of rogue soldiers infiltrating the venue, their intentions malicious. He recognized one of them, Darius, a former comrade who had once fought alongside him, now turned traitor. Icarus's heart sank. Darius had been a brother in arms, and seeing him lead an attack against their own made Icarus's blood boil. Lyra, I need you to stay behind me, he urged, stepping protectively in front of her. I'll handle this. The sound of gunfire erupted, and he could see the panic rising in Lyra's eyes. She reached for his arm, her grip firm. I will not hide while my people are in danger, she insisted, her resolve shining through despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. Icarus nodded, albeit reluctantly. Then let's do this together. They exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them as they prepared to face the chaos head-on. The battle that ensued was fierce and disorganized. Icarus fought with a fierce determination, his movements fluid and precise as he dispatched the attackers. Beside him, Lyra demonstrated surprising agility and strength, her training as a diplomat surprisingly translating into combat prowess. They formed a seamless team, each covering the other's blind spots, their connection deepening with every skirmish. But amid the chaos, Icarus's heart was heavy with the knowledge that he would have to make an impossible choice. As the last of the attackers fell, he turned to find Darius, who had taken a position near the back, seemingly preparing to make a final stand. Darius! Icarus shouted, his voice carrying over the remnants of the battle. It doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to do this. Darius's laughter echoed coldly. You think you can save them? You're just prolonging the inevitable, Icarus. The Zynthorians are our enemies. In that moment, Icarus felt a wave of clarity wash over him. He realized that he had a duty not just to humanity, but to the peace that he and Lyra had fought so hard to achieve. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation. No, Darius. We can find a way to coexist. You're blinded by hate. The betrayal from within his ranks was palpable, and as Icarus pushed forward to confront Darius, he felt the burden of both his past and his present bearing down on him. In a swift and decisive action, he managed to disarm Darius, revealing the traitor to both factions. As the truth of the betrayal was laid bare, a profound shift occurred. The Zynthorians and humans alike began to understand the futility of their animosity. Icarus turned to Lyra, who stood breathless yet resolute. Together, they had exposed the lies that had fueled the flames of hatred and war. In that moment of shared vulnerability, Icarus realized that true strength lay not in the power of the sword, but in the courage to stand for love, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As they stood together, united against the remnants of conflict, hope flickered to life in their hearts, a promise of a new tomorrow where love could indeed transcend the fiercest of battles.